What's up, champs? Welcome back to the channel. Let's jump straight into today's MMA news. Islam Makhachev has sent a pointed message toward Dana White, expressing frustration with how the UFC has been handling fighter promotion in recent years. In a recent Russian interview, Islam explained that he believes Dana may be experiencing burnout after spending so many years at the top of the sport. According to him, the UFC no longer pushes fighters with the same energy or creativity it once did. He said there was a time when the promotion could take almost anyone and build them into a star, but lately, that spark seems to have faded. Islam suggested that Dana needs to return to his roots, back to the mindset and passion that built the UFC into the global powerhouse it is today. Islam also revealed something even more surprising. He claims that Dana is already searching for someone who can eventually replace him. He acknowledged that staying motivated after so many years is difficult, especially when juggling multiple responsibilities. Islam said that if the UFC truly wants to make a fight massive, they can absolutely do it, but it requires the desire and focus from the top. He believes the organization has simply lost some of that interest and drive. The idea of replacing Dana White has always been controversial, and Islam's comments reopened that conversation. While many fans immediately bring up Conor as someone who could bring entertainment and attention to the role, Islam pointed out that Conor's recent issues make that extremely unlikely. Realistically, Hunter Campbell seems to be the one positioned to take over someday. Many fighters already go to him directly for bookings, and he works closely with Dana during meetings and negotiations. Back in 2016, when the UFC was sold to WME IMG for $4 billion, part of the agreement required Dana to remain as president because the new owners didn't want the company without him. That shows how valuable his presence once was. However, things are different now under TKO. They don't appear to share the same devotion to keeping Dana locked into that role permanently, and reports suggest they plan to gradually transition him out of the position. Islam also pointed out that Dana doesn't seem to have the same level of control he once had. In the past, Dana would openly answer questions, tease matchups, and drop hints about the future. Now, he often pushes questions aside or avoids giving concrete answers. Islam believes this change reflects the shifting power structure within the UFC and the overall direction the organization is heading. Before we continue, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. It really helps support the channel. Moving on to another news, Jon Jones has finally revealed why he chose to pursue a matchup with Alex Pereira instead of accepting the massive $30 million offer to fight Tom Aspinall. Speaking on a recent podcast with Jeff Wu, Jon confirmed that he did, in fact, turn down the offer and went on to break down the reasoning behind that decision. He made it clear that he isn't like every other fighter who steps into the cage purely for a paycheck. If money were his main motivation, he said he would have already signed to fight Tom without hesitation. Instead, Jon's focus is locked on one thing: competing on the UFC White House card. According to him, that's the real prize, and the opponent is secondary. Jon explained that fighting Alex Pereira simply makes more sense for him at this stage. There is far more footage to study, more tendencies to analyze, and more time to prepare for what Alex brings to the table. Jon acknowledged that Tom is the bigger man physically, but he believes that both Tom and Alex would end up in the same position if he is able to take them to the ground. In his mind, the grappling gaps are clear, and the path to victory remains the same. He emphasized that at this point in his career, fighting just for the sake of fighting doesn't hold any value for him anymore. The only reason he stepped out of retirement was the opportunity to compete on that historic White House event. During the podcast, Jon reflected on how different his mindset is today compared to when he was younger. He said that at 23 years old, he was already fighting the top athletes in the world while climbing the ranks at record speed. He contrasted that with seeing Tom in his early 20s getting dominated by fighters that, according to Jon, many people had never even heard of. To him, that difference matters. He stated that Alex has that it factor, describing how beloved he is in Brazil and how even his simple catchphrases inspire fans who don't fully understand what he's saying. That presence, Jon said, is part of what drew him toward a potential matchup with Alex. He then shifted to the bigger picture, highlighting that every decision he makes now carries long-term meaning. Jon talked about legacy, global impact, and choosing opponents who will be remembered for generations. As he sees it, Alex fits that description more than anyone else currently available. The situation becomes even more interesting when considering how Dana White will respond. Jon recently backed out of the agreed fight with Tom after telling Dana he was on board, which could create tension behind the scenes. Dana is known for holding grudges, and past situations, like his falling out with Francis, illustrate how long those disagreements can last. With so many fighters pushing to be included on the prestigious White House card, John may have created complications for himself by stepping away from the Tom fight. Still, his intentions remain clear. He wants the moment, the stage, and the legacy that comes with performing on that card. Moving on to another news. The debate over who will be Islam Makhachev's toughest challenge continues to heat up, and many fans are split between two names, Ilia and Shavkat Rakhmonov. Ilia brings elite striking, explosive power, and the ability to shut anyone's lights out in a single exchange. Shavkat, on the other hand, has the size, strength, and well-rounded grappling that could potentially neutralize Islam's pressure-heavy style. But according to Colby Covington, the answer is clear. In a recent interview with Helen Yee, Colby said that Ilia is the toughest matchup for Islam. Colby explained that Ilia's low center of gravity makes him extremely difficult to take down and even harder to hold down. He said Ilia's jiu-jitsu is underrated and that he sees him scrambling back to his feet against most grapplers, even someone as dominant as Islam. But what really makes Ilia dangerous is his power. Colby called him one of the biggest punchers the UFC has ever seen and said he'd love to watch Ilia get his hands on Islam and knock him out. Colby added that the matchup needs to happen, whether at lightweight or welterweight, because fans want answers. Ilia's confidence, footwork, and explosiveness make him a threat from the opening bell, and his ability to fight off takedowns could force Islam into long striking exchanges. Meanwhile, Shavkat remains a looming challenge with his size and wrestling, but Colby believes Ilia poses the greater danger because of his style, his compact frame, and his fight-ending power. Moving on to another news, Jon Jones has stirred up more controversy by claiming that Tom Aspinall faked his eye injury in the fight against Cyril Gane. Jon said he re-watched the moment closely and came away convinced that Tom reacted in a way that didn't match the actual foul. According to Jon, Tom didn't even grab the eye that was poked under the eyelid, which immediately made him question the legitimacy of the reaction. Jon suggested that Tom simply took a quick way out of a difficult situation, and he didn't hold back when breaking it all down. Jon brought up the Curtis Blaydes fight as his first red flag. In that matchup, Blaydes looked ready to dominate, and then Tom threw a kick and instantly fell to the ground, injuring his knee. Jon said that injuries happen in the sport, but he still expected at least an attempt from Tom to stand or show some effort to continue. Instead, Tom was completely out of the fight with no resistance, and Jon admitted that moments like that stick with him. Then he shifted to the Cyril Gane fight, where the eye poke happened. Jon explained that usually fighters immediately try to get the doctor's attention, rubbing their eye, blinking, or doing anything to make it clear something is wrong, but Tom didn't do any of that. Jon pointed out that even the doctor initially believed Tom was fine until Tom insisted he couldn't continue. Jon said it didn't look like Tom was even trying to see. It appeared to him that Tom had already made up his mind. The biggest detail Jon focused on was which eye Tom grabbed. Jon claimed that the finger went underneath one eyelid, which would be extremely painful, while the other finger only touched the top of the opposite eyelid. But Tom ended up covering the eye that wasn't deeply poked. Jon believes that means Tom didn't even know which eye was supposed to be compromised. To Jon, that was the clearest sign that Tom saw an opportunity to exit the fight and took it without hesitation. Jon finished by saying that moments like these reveal what's behind the Tom Aspinall image and show him a lot more about who Tom really is as a fighter. Moving on to another news, Khamzat reveals sad news regarding his health. After his dominant performance against Duplessis in August, the champion talked about wanting a quick turnaround in his post-fight interview. Since then, however, all we've seen is delay after delay in his return. During a recent interview with Adam Zubaira, it was confirmed that Khamzat will be out until after Ramadan next year, which falls around the middle of March. According to Khamzat, he needs to undergo a small operation on his foot. My return is after Ramadan. Right now, I have a small operation on my foot. I'll step away from training for a couple of weeks, heal my wound, and then prepare after Ramadan. Whoever they give me, that's who we'll face. This update leaves a big question mark over the middleweight division, especially with contenders lined up and momentum shifting every month. Fans were expecting a quick comeback, but it's clear that Khamzat is focused on healing properly before jumping into another high-stakes fight. As the topic of Khamzat continued, he was also asked whether he would step in if an altercation broke out in Qatar between Arman and Ilia. Khamzat made it clear that he'd let the two settle it themselves, but anyone trying to jump in would have a problem with him. If something happens, they'll fight one-on-one. We will beat the ones who try to jump in. This stance isn't surprising, given Khamzat's intensity and loyalty to fair competition. His presence alone is usually enough to keep situations from escalating. With his return now set for after Ramadan, the division waits to see how the landscape shifts in his absence. Moving on to another news. Paddy Pimblet and Ilia had an unexpected run-in that immediately set the MMA world buzzing. The two were in Qatar for UFC activities, and with so many fighters staying in the same hotel, close encounters were bound to happen. Just days ago, Arman and Ilia almost bumped into each other while switching elevators. And now fresh footage has surfaced showing Paddy and Ilia crossing paths during the morning weigh-ins. It began with Paddy approaching calmly, saying, "What's happening? Everything all right?" Ilia responded with a sharp tone, throwing a light verbal jab that instantly raised the tension. Paddy kept his composure, telling Ilia to relax and calm down as the atmosphere tightened around them. Security quickly appeared in the background, ready to intervene if anything escalated. The brief moment felt intense, even though neither fighter moved beyond words. Paddy tried to brush it off with a casual attitude, while Ilia held his stance, clearly still fired up. Alvaro Camorno posted the short clip on X, where fans immediately began dissecting every frame. You can hear the exchange, see both men sizing each other up, and feel the kind of energy that only comes when rival personalities collide at a high-stakes event. Even though it didn't turn physical, the stare-down and tone made the moment memorable. It's exactly the kind of thing that adds fuel to ongoing debates about future matchups. UFC security has been doing an excellent job throughout the week, keeping fighters apart and preventing unnecessary chaos. With so many competitors sharing hallways, elevators, and warm-up areas, tensions can easily rise, and this brief encounter proved how quickly things can get heated when fighters with history cross paths. In the end, everything fizzled out as fast as it started. The verbal exchange stayed contained. No one stepped out of line, and security ensured both men moved on without further issues. Still, fans viewed the clip as another reminder of the simmering rivalry between Paddy and Ilia, one that might eventually make its way into the octagon when the time is finally right. It added another layer to their rivalry. Moving on to another news, Paddy Pimblet decided to troll Arman ahead of UFC Qatar, and the clip quickly went viral. Arman recently appeared on TNT Sports, playing their Winner Stays On game, where he had to pick winners between some of the biggest names and matchups in lightweight history. The host rapid-fired a series of fantasy and real matchups, and Arman gave his answers with confidence. The segment started with Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje, and Arman immediately leaned toward Poirier. Then came Poirier versus Eddie Alvarez, and once again, Arman chose Poirier. The choices kept coming quickly. Poirier versus Michael Chandler? Poirier. Poirier versus Donald Cerrone? Poirier. Poirier versus Tony Ferguson? Still Poirier. Poirier versus Max Holloway? Poirier. Poirier versus BJ Penn? Poirier again. Then things got interesting. BJ Penn versus Edson Barboza? Arman went with BJ Penn. BJ Penn versus Arman? That time, Arman confidently chose himself. When asked about himself versus Conor, he didn't hesitate and picked Arman. Himself versus Charles Oliveira? Arman. Himself versus Paddy Pimblet? Arman, for sure. Himself versus Ilia? Arman. Then came the big one, Arman versus Lam. The host asked, 155 or 170? Arman chose 155. Then, with the same confidence, said Arman again. The final matchup was Arman versus Khabib, and this time he answered Khabib without hesitation, showing respect while still keeping his competitive edge. After the clip was posted online, Paddy jumped into the comments and delivered a classic troll. He wrote, Arman versus a bit of back pain on fight day. Back pain check. It was a playful jab referencing past discussions around Arman dealing with back issues before a fight. Fans immediately reacted, some laughing at Paddy's cheeky comment and others firing back, defending Arman's performances. The exchange added a bit of spice ahead of UFC Qatar, especially with Arman rising through the ranks and Paddy always finding ways to stir things up.